open and granted around the Northwest on Highland Radio. Thanks for listening in. Okay, let's talk nature. No better man than Aengus Kennedy from Nature Northwest is here. Aengus, good to see you.
John, good to be here.
And let me just close out of something here on the screen. We don't need that. Right, okay. This time of the year, and every time I drive down the town, I see it. There's a beautiful tree on the right-hand side that's all red at the moment. What sort of tree is that? Just down there, almost opposite where the new community hospital has been built. There's a huge tree down there, and this time of the year, it's lovely red colour. The leaves are...
Oh, is it a type of maple?
Almost. Just it's nearly all red at the moment.
Yeah, it's stunning. Stunning the colours that are coming out at the moment. Yeah.
Now, let's look into a little bit of the science behind it, I suppose, as to why the leaves change colour at this time of the year. And it's not just reds; it can be yellow and orange and browns and it's. I always think it's because it's to do with water. Is it that they don't? The tree stops giving them water and then they dry up and fall off?
Yeah, that's a part of it. Really, it's all about light and light availability. Just like in the spring, the light heats up the soil and it triggers the growth to start coming. At this time of year, the day getting shorter and shorter, and we're well past the equinox now, where it's equal daytime and nighttime in the 24 hours. So as we all know, our days are getting shorter and shorter, and nights are getting longer, and the trees and all the plants around us are responding. And one of the big responses that we see is colour.
Two words from school spring to mind. One is chlorophyll and the other is photosynthesis. Please explain.
That's exactly it. Photosynthesis is this amazing ability that trees have to be able to extract carbon from the atmosphere around us. And then they use carbon to build carbohydrates. We've all heard of carbohydrates, and carbohydrates essentially are sugars or types of sugars. So they extract that carbon from the air that's all around us, that we're breathing in and out the whole time, and they take that out and they store that in themselves. They turn it into sugars and turn it into their fuel.
And that's another reason why trees are so good, because they take carbon out of the air.
That's exactly
it.
But
to do a good purpose.
Because the carbon that's attached to oxygen, the carbon dioxide, is the gas that traps heat. And too much carbon dioxide causes our global warming, causes our climate to change. And we're emitting carbon dioxide when we burn fossil fuels. So when you drive your car down past that tree, you're emitting carbon dioxide. About 16 grams of carbon dioxide go out of a small car every 100 metres. So if you can imagine a balloon, a party balloon filled up, that's the amount of carbon dioxide that's coming out of a small little car, like a little Volkswagen Polo or a Nissan Micra or something, every 100 metres. So all of that carbon going up into the sky, mixed with oxygen, forming carbon dioxide. But the trees, and of course the other plants as well, but the trees are the biggest, they're pulling that carbon dioxide in, separating the carbon from the oxygen, pushing out the oxygen for us, and storing the carbon themselves. So they use the carbon as their food source, effectively.
Okay, so at this time of the year then, why are they changing colour? Why do they go from green to brown or red or yellow or whatever, and then ultimately fall off?
Yeah, well, that whole process, that photosynthesis, which is the process of them taking the carbon and separating it from the oxygen, that is done with special chemicals in the leaves called chlorophyll. And chlorophyll is the green stuff. And the reason leaves are green in grass, in bushes and shrubs, in a potato plant, in any of them, is because of the chlorophyll. And it's the main chemical chemical mix that's in leaves. And it masks all the other colours. And the chlorophyll, along with the sun's energy. So the sun provides the energy. And then the chlorophyll is the factory floor as such, and it's able to process that carbon and get that carbon and turn it into something useful for the tree or for the plant.
So a lot of it is down to the fact that there's less sun.
That's exactly it. So of course every day, even though it's a gorgeous warm sunny day today, but every day the amount of sun, the amount of light availability is decreasing as we head towards midwinter. And so the trees and all the other plants have responded to that, and they've stopped making chlorophyll. So they're constantly producing chlorophyll throughout spring and summer, constantly replenishing their stock of that green stuff, which allows them to take the carbon out of the sky. But at this time of year, they've stopped building that. So if you can imagine this desk in front of us was painted with a rich green, heavy paint, and then if we clean back all that paint, you're going to see the colours that are lying underneath. And that's effectively what's happening with the leaves. So the leaves have this rich green chemical mix inside them, the chlorophyll. But when that stops being produced, and some of it actually gets pulled back into the tree and gets broken down into its different chemical compounds, well, then you're left with the colours underneath.
Okay. And that's just chemicals in the leaf, is it?
Chemicals in the leaf, yeah. So various other things that make the leaf structure and keep the leaf working and protect the leaf from pests to a certain extent, from excess sunshine like a sunscreen. Those various different chemicals, they come in browns and oranges and yellows. And then depending on the amount of sunshine and the amount of sugars and of course the species of tree, you'll get different variations of colour. But once you pull back that green, once you stop producing the green chlorophyll, which is at this time of year, and it starts to break down or get pulled back into the tree, well then the colours that are underneath start to get revealed.
And why are different trees, different colours, different leaves, different colours? Should they not be all the same pretty much?
You'd think. And an example of how they can be all the same is the wonderful aspen tree, one of our native trees. And aspen trees or trembling poplar have that little roundy leaf that shakes in the tiniest bit of breeze. But they're the kind of tree that people don't notice so much until this time of year. And if you happen to be driving out past Glen Swilly right now, or in that kind of area, and in particular Glen Swilly has a lot of aspen trees, have a look out and you'll see these bright yellow trees, patches of bright yellow trees, and they're an identical yellow. And the reason they're identical yellow is because aspen tree clones itself. So out of its roots, more aspen trees pop up. So you'll see a whole stand of aspen trees, whereas actually it's one giant plant that is connected underneath the ground. So all of the colour is the exact same. But to answer your question, depending on the type of tree, the type of species and the kind of chemical mix that it makes, that will depend on the colour. That's one aspect. And then the other thing is depending on the conditions that happen throughout the summer and the conditions that are happening now.
Okay. And then when the leaves do fall, I mean, they're a bit of a nuisance, but it's all part of the ecosystem, and they form a purpose too, don't they?
Hugely. So you think of all of that carbon that has been collected out of the sky and separated from the oxygen. So that carbon processed into carbohydrates and mixed with other chemicals. So each leaf is around about 40 to 50% of its dry weight of carbon, and it's got a whole load of other nutrients as well, minerals that have been pulled out of the soil and whatnot. So each leaf as it falls is its own little nutrition package. And little by little, the worms and the mites and the wood lice and the millipedes and a lot of those little characters that we see on the move at this time of year, they're eating up those leaves and they're breaking them down. And once they crunch them down into small enough pieces, the bacteria can get at it, the fungus can get at it. And of course, that recycles all those leaves and turns them into soil for the next couple of years and for the next generation of plants.
What about evergreens and, the not the leaves, but the sort of the spiky leaves, it's the thin leaves, and then like firs and trees like that. They change a bit at this time of the year as well, do they?
They do, yeah. So evergreen trees, they actually, the conifer trees at least, evolved way before our flowering trees. So most of the deciduous trees. So they're a very, very old thing that has been on the planet for a very long time. And they have an amazing adaptation. They hold on to most of their leaves all year round. And that gives them the advantage that the minute there's a little bit of sunshine or enough sunshine, on a day like today, for instance, enough energy, they're able to do that process of photosynthesis. There's enough energy for them to trigger the chlorophyll, that green stuff in their leaves. Okay. They're able to start capturing carbon. So that's an advantage, but a disadvantage is that when the frosts come, and there's a lot of liquid in leaves, if the leaves freeze and that water inside the leaves, if it expands, of course that'll damage the leaf and then it's no good to you and it's a hindrance. Whereas so evergreen leaves, they tend to make very short, very tough little leaves, and very thin leaves, and often they're covered in a kind of waxy coating which protects them from those frosts.
Oh, okay. So the idea would be that there wouldn't be much moisture or water on them, so that if it does freeze, it won't do too much harm.
Yeah, and particularly protecting the moisture that's inside them. So you think of your typical evergreen leaf, it's usually quite thin, and then even ones that are a bit broader, like say holly, they're very, very tough. And so that gives them that advantage. They're ready, but it also means that they have to protect themselves in the frost. And the other disadvantage that evergreen trees have is that when there are winter storms come, all that extra weight of leaves is like a big sail. So that gives them an opportunity increases the opportunity for them to get knocked over in the storms. Yeah. Whereas the deciduous trees, they're dropping their leaves right now, and that is allowing the air pass through them much easier, so they'll be able to withstand the storms.
Okay, so they don't have it all their own way, just because they look green the whole year round.
Yeah.
There's disadvantages to it.
Disadvantages, and I'm going to look out for that tree that you mentioned at the beginning of this piece, because you get very different colours. The birch has its bright yellows. The aspen even brighter yellows. Often oak has a much kind of browner colour. But a lot of the maples and the famous fall that we hear about in America and New Hampshire and whatnot, a lot of those trees are various different maple trees. And a lot of the maples go very bright reds and bright yellow trees. So sometimes when you see some of those really bright colours, it mightn't necessarily be a native tree.
Okay. Well, one tree that's very common is the rowan, and when we normally associate the rowan with those wee red berries. When are they out? Are they out now?
Now's the time. Now's the time to see them. And this year, rowan seem to be having a particularly good year. They seem to have really heavy crops.
Okay, and the reason I mention that is because the redwings, which are arriving around about now, they rely very heavily on the rowan.
They do. So redwings are a type of thrush. So if you think of your blackbird in the garden, blackbird is part of the thrush family. And then if you think, you might recognise the song thrush, which is a bit like the blackbird but has the brown back and the little flecks on its chest. Redwing looks very similar to that. So kind of size of a blackbird, has that brown back, a brighter front. But when they flap their wings, you'll see little red patches in their armpits, as such, in their wing.
Hence the name.
Hence the redwings. The other thing that helps them stand out is they have a little white stripe above their eye. So if you have a pair of binoculars, a lovely thing to do at this time of year, any of the hedgerows around you, and you see any movement in the hedgerows, look out and see what kind of thrush it is, because the thrushes, there's many different types of thrushes, but the redwings are one of the most colourful, and they come in their thousands and thousands.
Where do they come from?
They come from some breed in North Scotland, but really it's up into Scandinavia, right up in Scandinavia, other parts of Northern Europe. And they deplete the berries there. So they love to eat the rowan berries, the hawthorn berries. And once they've eaten all the berries there, or if for some reason they're in those countries where they're breeding, there hasn't been as good a crop, they will head down south. And last Thursday, I think it was, I saw the first text saying somebody saw some redwings, and I went out that night outside my house and I could hear them. You can hear this little bzz sound.
And you hear them for the first time.
Yeah, for the first time of the year. And if you're standing outside at this time of year looking for northern lights, or just going out and getting a breath of fresh air, listen out for that sound, because it's very distinctive. There's not many other sounds at night at this time of year, and it's like a little call, a little high pitched call, and that's the redwings moving about.
When they come from cold countries, Scandinavia, and they come down, why do they just keep on going to where it gets warmer for the winter? Because it's fairly cold here too during the winter.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's estimated that about 20 million birds pass over Britain and Ireland on the autumn migration, and back up north on the spring migration. And of course, the swallows already gone, the swifts long gone, the cuckoo long gone, the swans and the geese and those bigger characters are just arriving. So some of them, they'll stop off in Ireland as a pit stop and keep moving. But some of them, if they're tough enough to withstand our winters, to be able to deal with our winters, they'll stay here, because it takes a huge amount of energy to keep on moving south.
And would they stay, like, say a county like Donegal, or stay up here in the north or the northwest? Would they stay here, or would bigger numbers go on down south? South of the country.
They tend to keep moving. Yes, so they'll move down south, and there'll be more following over the next few weeks. But if there's enough food for them, if the food source is provided, so it's yet another, the amount of times we mentioned, protecting the hedgerows. Because again, another lovely sound that I heard also, well, it was Thursday a week back, I heard my first whooper swans, and the call of the whooper swans, very distinctive call. And the whooper swan is the one with the yellow and black beak, not the orange and black beak that we see all summer long. So the whooper swans don't breed here at all. They come down from Iceland, where they breed, and thousands of those arrive into Donegal. And they some will spread out over the country. Some will stay here around Inch Wildfowl Reserve and exploring the fields during the daytime, all winter long. But they will. They have been coming here for thousands and thousands of years. They've been coming here before we were here. So I think, just like the redwings, just like the whooper swans, it's up to us to make sure that there's still somewhere for them to come to, and the sustenance that they need.
Whooper swans, when they're in flight, they're quite a sight.
Yeah, they're an amazing sight, yeah. Both the whoopers, and then there's various different species of geese that are arriving into the country right now. And you'll hear them, because they call, they're communicating with each other, honking away with each other, very loud, even when they can be high up, and they're a beautiful sight. the whooper swans are some of the heaviest flying birds in the world. They're as white can be, and oftentimes it's often evening time or early morning when you'll see them flying if they're going over your house or crossing the road on your commute, because they'll be heading from where they roost at night off to their breeding grounds or off to their feeding grounds. And when they're flying that high, that early in the day, it might still be semi-dark where you are, but they're picking up the light. So it's a very beautiful sight because their wings seem to just reflect all the sunlight, all that beautiful bright white.
And it could be anywhere inland.
It could be anywhere inland, yeah. They typically like to go to a place like, say, Inch Wildfowl Reserve or something like that where they go onto the water at night time and they feel safe there. But they can travel quite a distance. So you could see them turning up anywhere around Donegal, really. They particularly like kind of stubble fields. They particularly like grassy fields or semi-submerged fields. So areas of a river, areas of the Finn or areas of the Lennon that tend to burst when there's, tend to flood when there's big rain in the wintertime. You'll often see them come into there. They could linger for quite a few weeks.
So a good time to see them in flight would be the morning or the evening.
Morning or evening, and if you're driving out that Derry road from Letterkenny to Derry, it can be very distracting. So keep your eyes on the road, because you can get enormous numbers of geese and big numbers of swans sometimes flying overhead. But get yourself down to Inch Wildfowl Reserve if you get a chance. Look along the hedgerows when you're walking towards the hides, and there's a good chance you'll see some of those redwings that have just landed eating the rowan berries. And then overhead in the evening time, you'll see the whooper swans, the geese, and some of the other characters.
So the redwings, do they breed here or do they just feed here?
So they just feed here. So they're breeding north of here, but when they come down, they're following the food, basically. And once they've eaten all those berries, when you think about it, it's an amazing tactic that the rowan tree has. Because the willow tree produces its little seeds, which are attached to a kind of fluff, a bit like dandelions, and they blow in the wind. The rowan tree or the oak tree drops an acorn which the squirrel might stash somewhere, and then if it doesn't eat it, it'll grow into another oak tree. So the rowan tree has adopted a very different tactic. It's developed this beautiful bright red, so really visual berry which really shines in the sunshine a day like today. So the birds see that, they're triggered by that colour, and they come down, they'll eat that berry, and then they fly off. And they'll roost up in a tree, maybe in your garden at night, and through their little system will come the seed, which is intact, and it passes right through the system, but it's been transported by the bird. So those birds are coming down through Scotland right now. So a little rowan tree that might be, the seed might have been laid in your garden a couple of years ago. It could have come from a redwing that ate a rowan berry in Loch Lomond up in Scotland the week before.
So the redwing
the
relies on the rowan, and the rowan relies on the redwing.
Completely, and without one, it wouldn't have the other. Yeah.
All right, interesting. As always, thanks, Aengus. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Around